This training will provide an overview of findings, adverse actions, and corrective actions from Chapter 24, Administrative Reviews and Investigations. This video is presented by the Oregon Department of Education Child Nutrition Programs, also known as ODE-CMP. In this training, we will cover the information included in an administrative review report, adverse actions, and responding to corrective actions. Once you are done with this training, you will know the parts of a CACFP administrative review report and gain a broad understanding of how adverse action and corrective action are addressed following a CACFP administrative review. Following a CACFP administrative review, the ODE-CMP reviewer will issue a review report to the sponsor's official, who is on file with ODE-CMP as the sponsor's authorized representative or food program coordinator, as listed in CMP Web, or their designee. The report is typically issued during the exit conference and must be signed by all staff present. A copy of the report will also be sent to the board chair of nonprofit organizations and school boards or business owners who are not present during the exit conference. In some instances, the review report may be issued through an official letter in place of an exit conference. A review report contains detailed information about the review, findings, background and observations, corrective actions, commendations, and technical assistance. We will cover each of these in the following slides. The first 2 pages of the CACFP Administrative Review Report includes information about the review. This includes review dates, the sponsor and ODE-CMP staff involved in the review, the test month for the majority of the records reviewed, the test sites, the number of areas in compliance where no findings were called, the number of areas not in compliance where at least one finding was called, and the applicable areas reviewed by ODE-CMP. Table 1 on the report lists the areas of the ODE-CMP review tool that are included as part of the review. Depending on the sponsor's organization type and the programs operated, the sections of the tools reviewed vary between sponsors and typically do not include all sections. This table will indicate what sections have corrective actions assigned, whether the findings were due to procedural issues or clerical issues, and the severity of the findings. The review report documents findings by review section. Findings are areas of noncompliance with federal regulations or state agency, ODE-CMP, policies. Some findings may result in adverse actions, which we will cover later in this training. Findings are typically a result of one or more of the following: clerical errors, we are all human and sometimes mistakes happen; inadequate staff training; inadequate written procedures or procedures not being followed; not having adequate systems in place to ensure compliance; and misunderstanding of the rules or regulations. The review report will include a background and observation section for each area there are findings. This section of the report is intended to provide relevant information that supports the findings of noncompliance. It will give detailed information regarding why a finding has been called and what the specific noncompliance was. It will include dates, meal types, names, and meal disallowances or adverse actions as applicable. This section may also describe any conversations that were had with sponsor staff or misunderstandings that led to the finding. This section is meant to help you understand why the finding was called and builds the full picture. The ODE-CMP reviewer will assign corrective actions in the review report. Corrective actions are those actions ODE-CMP requires the sponsor to take to correct the noncompliance findings. Corrective action must be submitted and implemented by the due date listed in the administrative review report. The sponsor may be required to take the following corrective actions: develop and implement systems or procedures to demonstrate compliance with federal regulations or state policy, training staff, submit other required documents, and other corrective action as deemed necessary by the review findings. Corrective actions must be implemented effectively and permanently and fully correct the areas of noncompliance. Near the end of the review report, and sometimes within the report, ODE CMP reviewers will also include technical assistance. This information includes recommendations and best practices for improving or simplifying CACFP operations. It will also include additional tools, resources, and trainings to support the sponsor staff in operating CACFP successfully. ODE CMP reviewers will also include reminders or clarifications of requirements to ensure sponsors have accurate information when making administrative or operational decisions for the CACFP. Towards the end of the review report, the ODE CMP reviewer will include commendations for the sponsor and sponsor staff. ODE CMP recognizes the work that sponsors do to operate the CACFP and ensure nutritious meals are provided to participants. ODE CMP reviewers take this opportunity to share positive observations, acknowledge specific program staff and the work the sponsor is doing, and share appreciation for the successes the sponsor has in operating the CACFP. Here's a quick knowledge check. Findings are A. Recommendations and best practices, B. Required actions to correct errors, C. Non-compliance with federal or state rules and regulations, or D. Positive observations of the sponsor's CACFP operations. The answer is C. Findings are areas of non-compliance with federal or state rules and regulations. Some findings result in adverse action by ODE CMP against the sponsor. Adverse action is considered an action that has a negative financial impact on the organization. This includes reimbursing the nonprofit food service account, adjustments to the 1-month enrollment report, or OMR, and meal disallowances. Some adverse actions are tied to overpayments to the sponsor on a paid CACFP reimbursement claim. In these cases, the sponsor will be provided a fiscal action tool, or FAT form, which will identify the amount of the overpayment due to ODE CMP. In all instances of adverse action, ODE CMP will issue appeal rights to the sponsor. We will cover all of this in more detail in the next few slides. Sponsors will be required to remove costs from the nonprofit food service account and use non-CACFP funds to cover the expenses when ODE CMP identifies the costs as being charged to CACFP funds in error. There are a number of reasons that costs may not be allowed to be charged to CACFP funds. This includes expenses not on the approved CACFP budget, even if the expenses may be allowable. If they are not identified on the approved CACFP budget, they are not allowed to be charged to CACFP funds. Next, expenses may be identified as being categorically unallowable for CACFP. This is commonly food and non-food items that are purchased for use other than CACFP meal service, such as candy, soda, and meals for meetings. Additionally, expenses that are not fully supported by source documentation is considered unallowable and may not be charged to CACFP funds. This includes purchased food, labor costs, and mileage costs. ODE CMP will revise the CMP Web claim system with the reviewer verified OMR numbers when discrepancies are found. ODE CMP policy is to revise the OMR numbers on the test month claim forward when the total fiscal action from the review is equal to or greater than $600. If the total fiscal action from the review is less than $600, then the verified OMER numbers will be applied to the next unpaid claim forward. Common errors that result in ODE CMP revising the OMER include the OMER is not reported correctly on the claim, the OMER is not developed correctly based on source documentation, such as not using accurate names, dates, or eligibility categories, CACFP child enrollment, CEF errors, such as the form not signed or dated by the parent guardian, or the form was dated more than 12 months prior to the OMER month, and confidential income statement, CIS errors, such as the form not signed or dated by the parent guardian, being more than 12 months from signature date, missing a social security number, and not having the No SSN box checked, and not having the eligibility category determined correctly, or the determining official not completing their portion of the form. ODE CMP reviewers will disallow meals that are not supported by source documentation and found to not meet meal pattern requirements. Disallows are made based on the records provided by the sponsor and from the observed meal. Meals disallowed based on records provided include, but are not limited to, missing or incomplete meal count records, missing or incomplete attendance records, menus that did not document all required meal pattern components, and documentation does not demonstrate compliance with meal pattern requirements. Additionally, meals disallowed on the observed meal include, but are not limited to, the observed meal not meeting meal pattern requirements, and point of service meal counts not taken accurately. Meal disallowances for claims that have already been paid will be included on the Fiscal Action Tool, or FAT form, which we will cover next. Meal disallowances for the observed meal, or meals that have not been paid as part of a reimbursement claim, are not included on the Fiscal Action Tool and must not be claimed by the sponsor. Sponsors will be provided a Fiscal Action Tool, also referred to as a FAT form, with the review report when the review results in fiscal action against the sponsor. Fiscal action is taken when ODE CMP determines that the sponsor was overpaid on one or more processed reimbursement claims. The FAT form only includes downward OMER adjustments and meal disallowances. If the ODE CMP verified OMER results in an increase to sponsor reimbursement, then it will not be included on the FAT form. ODE CMP will not retroactively provide a claim increase to paid claims due to upward OMER adjustments or upward claim revisions. Upward adjustments will only be applied to future claims when applicable. USDA regulations allow ODE CMP a $600 disregard threshold when recouping overpayments of processed claims. This means that if the total fiscal action is less than $600, ODE CMP will not recover the funds. If the fiscal action is $600 or more, ODE CMP will recover the fiscal action from future claims or through invoicing the sponsor. The disregard threshold only applies to paid claims. It does not apply to unpaid claims. The sponsor will be required to revise unpaid claims to ensure only allowable meals are claimed. Sponsors who have adverse actions will be provided appeal rights with the CACFP Administrative Review Report. Only the adverse actions are appealable. The sponsor has 15 days following the receipt of the appeal rights to file an appeal if desired. Sponsors must prove that ODE CMP was inaccurate in determining the adverse actions through the appeal process. For more information, see Chapter 26 of the CACFP Policy and Procedure Manual on the appeal process and the accompanying training. Here's a quick knowledge check. Adverse actions include A. Nonprofit food service account reimbursement, B. 1-month enrollment report adjustments, C. Meal disallowances, or D. All of the above. The answer is D. Adverse actions are those actions that ODE-CMP requires the sponsor to take that have a negative financial impact on the sponsor. This includes reimbursing the nonprofit food service account, downward revisions to the 1-month enrollment report, or OMER, and meal disallowances. The CACFP administrative review cannot be closed until the sponsor submits and implements adequate corrective actions to address the findings identified in the review report. Next, we will cover how sponsors should respond to and submit corrective actions, as well as how ODE-CMP responds to corrective actions. When developing corrective actions, sponsors are encouraged to use the review report as a checklist. ODE-CMP reviewers will compare submitted corrective action documents to the corrective action sections of the review report to ensure that all required items have been addressed. Additionally, it is important to meet all deadlines assigned. If a deadline will not be met, be sure to communicate this to the ODE-CMP reviewer in advance of the due date and request an extension. In most cases, your ODE-CMP reviewer will work with you to provide a reasonable extension. If you are unsure of what the ODE-CMP reviewer is requiring as a corrective action, please reach out prior to the due date to ask questions and receive additional guidance. ODE-CMP's policy is to provide sponsors 3 attempts to submit acceptable corrective actions. It is important to review the ODE-CMP response to corrective action and to ask questions to ensure that all pieces are completed, submitted, and implemented as required. ODE-CMP's goal is to review submitted corrective actions within 15 calendar days from receipt. Reviewers will verify that the sponsor has addressed all corrective actions by using the report as a checklist, just how we encourage sponsors to use the report when developing corrective actions. In order for corrective actions to be accepted, all required items must be adequately addressed. When responding to corrective actions, ODE-CMP reviewers will provide sponsors with additional instruction on outstanding corrective actions, clear and reasonable due dates, and additional technical assistance to assist the sponsor in understanding the expectations and how to develop the corrective action to ensure program compliance and fully address the findings of noncompliance. This training covered the CACFP Administrative Review Report, adverse actions, and responding to corrective actions. ODE supports equity and excellence for every learner. This institution is an equal opportunity provider. Thank you for taking this training.